A little bit of the bubbly.
Oh, son of a bitch!
I'm a comedian, yeah.
Jesus!
Stone Cold E.T. will like a couple cheeseburgers.
Raging elephants.
Undertaker, you come on down.
Die, die, die.
Oh my God!
Welcome back to the Crucial Squared Circle, the most crucial wrestling podcast with Mark Franchise, Davison Sarai, and the most dangerous letter in the alphabet, T.
And of course, if you're not down with that, we got 2 words for you!
All right, welcome back to the Crucial Squared Circle after 4 months of COVID hibernation, and good Lord.
Hashtag COVID coma, dude.
Oh my gosh, what the trash.
Dude.
It's been forever.
What the fuck year is it? It's either 1987 or 2026.
For real.
I feel insane.
It's been a while. After we had participated in the IPW event, Tough Luck, and I think that was March 17th.
14, something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It was right before St. Patrick's Day, and we knew things were kind of going down and it was going to get dicey, and that was probably going to be the last event locally that we were going to be attending for a long time coming, and we were not wrong.
No, there's already a bunch of stuff that was closing right around that weekend.
Yeah.
I think we even had a conversation about, like, is this a responsible thing to be doing?
Right. Well, people were bailing. I know some people who have been attending. It wasn't a full house, obviously. Some people were apprehensive about coming out. For the people that did come out, though, holy crap, did we get a freaking show.
Stacked. Yeah, that was the irony of the whole situation. Like, the other shows being shut down resulted in all these guys not having anywhere to go. So suddenly there's, like, national talent all over the show. It was pretty badass.
Yeah, some people from Impact were showing up. The DTA, which originally it was supposed to be, Adam Wick and Isaiah Bronner, and it turned into the entire crew showed up.
Yeah. I actually just rewatched the show last night because it was a good ass show.
Yeah.
For the opening match to be, we're going to get into Dave Christ, who no longer has a job.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was Impact talent Dave Christ versus Jimmy Jacobs, for God's sake.
Like, yeah, that was insane.
That's an independent wrestling, all-star match.
Yeah.
Y-Bar. That was badass.
Yeah, that was really freaking sweet. We got really lucky, of course. Truth Martini was there as well, using his managerial expertise. To the max, as always, cut a promo with us.
Sure did.
It's pretty sweet with, minus everything that's happening and that was about to happen, that you could tell, IPW and the reputation of Josh Raymond is starting to grow heavily within Michigan, especially Southwest Michigan.
Oh, totally. It's cool, too, like him having been around as long as he has. Like, I don't know if he's in his 60s or 70s. Not that old. He's been around for me. He's got some good connections. So it's awesome. Yeah, I don't think people would assume like going to a bar show in Kalamazoo would result in the kind of people that are routinely showing up.
Yeah.
I mean, gee, what was the main event there? What was that huge dude from Impact? Malice was there.
Oh yeah, Malice and Carm for the IPW title.
Yeah, it was just crazy. I mean,
yeah.
Let's not forget, this was not the pinnacle of the show, but it was one of the pinnacles of my short life.
Yeah.
Got to do commentary with one Jimmy Jacobs.
Yeah, that was huge. Jimmy Jacobs kind of strolled in while I was doing ring announcing, and he kind of sat down and like went to pretend to grab the headphones or something, and you were basically like, no, fucking grab them. We're doing commentary.
Yeah.
And
I couldn't tell if he was kidding or not, so I just said, fuck this, put these on and sit down.
Well, and that was the cool thing, because as soon as I looked over, buddy Jeremiah was like, holy shit. And he tapped me, he's like, dude, look. And I was like, holy crap, they're doing commentary together. And the whole time me and him were talking, he's like, dude, she's got to be fucking losing her mind right now.
And that's what's funny, is I wasn't, like, I don't know, I'm just weird. I guess I've been around long enough doing these things. Like,
yeah.
He smelled fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, he's so handsome. Like, I was just picking up on this, like, sexual chemistry. That probably only occurred to me.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows?
I don't know. It's one of those weird things. Like, this isn't kind of like a toot your horn thing, but it's like in wrestling. They say get in the ring with somebody who's been doing it for a long time, and then you'll see like where your level is.
Yeah.
I'm super stoked that like I did okay with a guy who's been like doing it for almost 20 years.
No, you did fantastic. The whole match was great, and again, just adds to the diversity of not only this color commentating team, but this federation. It's completely different than anything else that's happening in Michigan right now. It really is. And not to take anything away from all the great things that have been happening, especially with Horror Slam, the charity that they've been putting on for Aaron O'Ryan's son. Not to get incredibly personal, but he's been going through some tough times. The leader of the Death Threat Army, his son's going through some real struggles right now, and they've put together some great fundraising shows for him. And as of now, things seem on the up and up with his son. Like, he's increasingly getting better through this. So we definitely want to send our well wishes to the entire O'Ryan family right now, especially with everything going on.
Absolutely. We're new, members of the IPW family, and he's a cornerstone, just human to human. Like, obviously, I wish the best for he and his fam. And,
yeah.
I know I donated to, I think they had a GoFundMe going at the time as well. So there was a lot of love going around, and I'm glad that people showed up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, people coming in huge. But again, it just shows how the wrestling community, especially in Michigan, sticks together and how close everybody is.
Yeah, totally.
As much as they love bashing their brains in.
It takes a special kind.
Yeah, indeed. So, tough luck. IPW was a great event. We saw Jack Price make a surprise cameo at the end, attacking Karm from behind, who successfully defended the IPW title. IPW tag titles were not up for grabs at the previous event, but Michiana title, Aaron O'Ryan came in, defended it successfully. It was a hell of an event. It was a lot of fun.
I want to give a huge shout out. We've had him on the show before, Zach Ibiza.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
He had a match against Jake something, who was unannounced, to my knowledge. He came out the curtain right in front of the announcer desk, and I about passed a loaf. Like, you're 10 times bigger in real life.
Oh, yeah.
I remember, do you remember I brought in that goofy rose because I was going to try to give it to Derek Wolf on his way
yes.
in, and then Wolf didn't show up. So here comes Jake something like towering over the announce booth, and my only thought was like,
"This is for you.
Do you want this flower?" Fuck you. Ibiza looked amazing in that match.
Yeah.
An intensity level I've not seen from him.
I don't
beat that dude.
And he's going to pose more of a threat now. I'm predicting big things for Ibiza coming up in the next 6 months. Yep. I don't know if you've seen him since the stay-at-home order, but dude's dropped like 15 pounds.
Yeah.
He's more toned out now. He's really taken advantage of being at home, and he seems like he's in the hunt now. Like, I think that win just set him off on this path of like, okay, I know what I am now.
I think, and I agree with you, but I think it actually started when he had that match against Orion.
Oh, yeah.
The show before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Didn't we have, I think we met with him after that show.
Yeah.
We talked about it. And, he had a new fire in that one. Orion noticed and helped him up after that match.
Yeah.
I remember, which is kind of, unprecedented. Just, go back and rewatch it again. I've seen it a few times now. He looked like $1 million in that match. And I did see some pics on Facebook, and I saw him doing his meal planning and stuff. I'm going to take this opportunity to challenge independent wrestlers right now.
All right.
I'm not a believer in the Vince McMahon idea that you have to be some kind of power lifter to be a pro wrestler. However, I would say that every one of us is programmed because we've watched wrestling forever.
Yeah.
And we are accustomed to seeing wrestlers look a certain way of like having some level of like perceived athleticism.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
You don't need it to wrestle, but some people put the time in and they always move up the card. Always.
Yeah.
I want to know why more people don't. Like, you're already wrestling.
Yeah.
I know time is of the essence. I know not everybody has a bunch of time and money for supplements and working out or whatever, but like, I want people, you're already going to dedicate your time to this thing, take an extra 2 or 3 hours a week, work on your look, just ratchet it up a notch,
I think, I can't speak from experience by any chance, but I would imagine as a promoter, when I see a guy who not only is putting in work in the ring and is learning and staying humble, but also working on their physical health, it shows an extra amount of dedication.
Totally.
And also commitment to that. Maybe it speaks something to the promoter, as in, this guy's showing that he's got the drive and that I can trust him with specific things, or that I can trust him to hold a title.
Your body is your evidence that you are putting in the work.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
I don't even want to know what my body's saying right now. It's like, save it! Women and children first!
Don't drop an elbow on little.
Don't pop me!
Hey, not everybody has to have the six-pack. But, no,
I got
kudos.
the kegger.
Kudos to Ibiza. I've talked about it before. I used to do a whole bunch of, I was trying to get into bodybuilding and wound up doing, some powerlifting and stuff.
Yeah.
Meal planning is no joke. You do have to spend more money on food and whatnot, but, it is entirely possible to put on weight with muscle and drop weight from fat if you're working hard and if you're eating right.
Right. You just got to find the right thing that works for you, honestly. That's what it comes down to. So.
Anyway, good on you, Ibiza. You're killing it.
Yeah. So a lot of big things in the works for IPW. Hopefully we will see the return of IPW in July. That all depends on what the heck is going to be continuing to happen with the COVID situation, which is why we've spent 4 months, basically, just about 4 months away from the podcast and everything else going on.
And I saw a map today. I keep following, and this is going to sound dark. I mean, it's dark times, right?
Right.
In private conversations, and for me, not even in private conversation, I will say if people are still getting together without masks, they're still flaunting COVID right now, get sick. I don't give a fuck. Go get sick. I don't care what you do. Get yourself sick. I saw Michigan on the map of potential closures again.
Yeah.
And I don't know, we definitely have had an uptick again, but it's nothing like Florida or Texas or Arizona where they're clearly just trying to focus on capitalism over health.
Yeah.
I'm willing to bet that our governor, who kept Michigan number one in terms of safety, keeping numbers down, will get an itchy trigger finger and close it down again if it looks like things are going on the rise.
Yeah.
So, I would love to do a show. However, Michigan being lit up on that map as places that are considering a reclosure makes me kind of not really sure if we can, plan on that or not.
Yeah, absolutely. We're just going to have to play by ear and see what happens, how everything's looking. Just stay safe. That's the key thing right now. We don't want anybody getting sick. I know one person on my Facebook friends list who had COVID, and she was out for 4 weeks. And it was no joke.
A couple people.
And I literally did a live remote. It was a charity event for homeless families in Calhoun County, Calhoun County, over the weekend. And this Trumper came in and basically started talking to one of the conservative talk radio hosts on one of the talk stations we have in Battle Creek, and was just talking about how the whole COVID thing is fake. And I'm just like, yeah.
Tell it to 500,000 dead people, dude.
Right. Well, even the radio host that I work with, who I don't necessarily agree with on a personal level, that guy left, and he was kind of like, I ain't touching that money. Because, regardless, health is not a political issue.
No.
When you take a virus and you try to put politics behind it, you really sound like a jerk.
Well, and to be fair, yes, people look like jerks doing it. The reason it became a political thing is because Trump downplayed it initially, and then he had to double, triple, quadruple down. You can't let people be. You won't wear a mask on TV.
Right.
I'm surprised Pence ever showed up wearing one on TV. That's going to lead us into talking about Vince and what they're doing with masks as well.
Right.
But my hope is that there are people who vote Republican or consider themselves conservative, and maybe they really mean it when they say they're doing it for for fiscal reasons or for religious reasons. Wake up and look around and ask yourself, are these the people who you want representing you?
For real.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Please distinguish yourself some way.
Just do the right thing.
You should be humiliated that those are the people representing your party.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. Whatever.
Well, I guess it's probably important that we get into everything that's been happening besides COVID, because there's been some real big uprising that's been happening since the stay-at-home order was put in place. And our city of Kalamazoo has been big time behind it. Of course, we're talking about the uprising of Black Lives Matter, which is far overdue and something that I think needs to be permanently implemented within our society. I think this has just gone on way too long, and it's starting to look like people are finally really fed up with it. Like, finally really fed up with it. Because people have been fed up with it. But, our co-host, who's not with us today, T, he said something. We had a fire a couple of, like a month or so ago, and he got really upset about the whole thing. Because when we had the Black Lives Matter march in Kalamazoo, he didn't even know about it. He didn't even know about George Floyd's death. He didn't know about any of this. And, he got super emotional. Because to him, he's just like, this is just going to end up being another 2-week thing, and nothing's going to ever change.
Right.
And it can't be a 2-week thing anymore. It really can't.
And it's important for people to know, too. I mean, that weekend of the KZU protest, I hope, really demonstrated to people just exactly how progressive and activist Kalamazoo is at its core. The news was not showing the full extent of what really went on downtown. And we were there for those protests, right? It doesn't surprise me that T didn't know. T has a real magical way of avoiding, any and all media. I don't know how the hell he does it, but he
just doesn't. Well, he doesn't have social media of any kind. He has it, but he doesn't participate.
He does a good job. He's really got himself sheltered from info for the most part. There's a big distinction happening because so many people have found it too easy to just keep looking away. Like, racism and fatal state-sanctioned racism in this country has been a problem. Everybody knows it's a problem. But like most problems that are too big to handle, people would prefer to just kind of look away. Just kind of put that away. Those people are the ones who think that we're winning the war because it says Black Lives Matter outside of the White House in D.C., and because there are buildings that are sporting posters, and that's awesome, but that is the kind of stuff that is truly only for the court of public perception. That has nothing to do with legal change, with changing actual legislation that's going to prevent police violence from occurring. A lot of states are on. I mean, Minneapolis, for God's sake, is defunding and disbanding our police force. Not everybody's into it. And that's because I think not everybody understands it, and we need to get realistic right now and say it's not always a question of misunderstanding. And I'm glad people are waking up to that. You've seen how I do it with people. I am blunt on Front Street because I believe in giving people an opportunity to really show themselves, and I will give you that opportunity. And I think with everybody seeing their mom or their grandfather or their whoever spouting this absolutely disgusting, caveman mentality, I think that finally seeing them get nasty is what's waking up a lot of other people who maybe would have been able to just keep looking away. Except now they realize it's right in their own house. It's right in their own family. And shit always gets worse before it gets better, but I'm pretty thrilled with the amount of stuff that's happened even just in the last 3 or 4 weeks here.
I think my biggest issue with the whole thing is the lack of understanding what another race of people can go through.
Right.
I'm not Jewish. I'm not Polish. I am of Hungarian descent, but it doesn't take somebody belonging to a select group of people to be absolutely shameful of what an entire race can do, and referring to the Holocaust. We all know what happened. We all know what happened. We all know how terrible it was. You can never rank terrible things that happen.
That's what we call the Oppression Olympics.
Right, exactly. But we all know just how awful it was, and you have to accept and take responsibility for what other people did and make sure it never happens again. And in this country, we start tearing down this entire world, and these people, the people that really get me are you can't change history, you're destroying history, and that's exactly the opposite of what is actually happening.
I mean, I gotta be honest, I wish we could destroy history.
Yeah.
If I could go back and destroy that shit and not let it happen in the first place, I'd do it in a heartbeat.
The Thanos mentality.
Yeah. Snap my fingers and get rid of the entire fucking Confederacy.
Yeah, right.
Get rid of slavery, everybody. Yeah, totally.
And you know, you go back to the end game when he says, you know, now I know what I'm going to do. I've been too soft. I'm going to shred this universe down to its last atom and then recreate it. And so that the world only knows what they have to gain and not what they've lost. And it sounds like a fucked up mentality, but it's why Thanos is the best Marvel villain.
I was just about to ask you what you thought, so I can see we took it the same way.
Yeah.
I've been an intense environmentalist for a long time as well, and I do think that human beings are the scourge of the earth. And I don't have any issue with doing a hard reset.
It takes a humble person to be able to sit back and go, yeah, it's a hard pill to swallow, but you know what? Not as hard as the pill that everyone else has had to swallow before me. In saying that, when I see people who say, oh, they're destroying history and they're tearing down these statues, and I'm like, why the hell would you want, one, a Confederate statue? That was our enemy. And two, when they say when they're destroying history, I'm all for that history being destroyed, because you have to look at it from a logical point of view. This has always been a white man's world. It's been a white man's country. If you're anything but a white man, you are fucked. You are low on the totem pole, and you're going to have to work extra hard just to prove that you're an equal. And in some cases, you weren't even an equal. You weren't even a man. So when people talk about destroying history and tearing down these statues and all this stuff, the way I look at it is like, I'm all for it. Change the entire mindset. If you really want change, you have to equal the playing field and take away everything that used to represent that this country belonged to white men.
Yeah. And
just, if you want to really make it equal, freaking destroy it. And to be scared of that is kind of, well, if you're, and I guess, I don't know, this is just a weird way of looking at it, but I feel like people who are afraid of that are comfortable in what they have.
Oh, no,
they're scared of change.
That's not a weird way to look at it. That's exactly what the fuck it is.
Yeah, they're just scared of that change and to stand up, because we got our things.
We got it just the way we want it.
Yeah.
There's no reason to change it. Here's what I love. People saying, how are we supposed to remember it? You fucking idiots. We're going to have Confederacy statues up, not because we, follow that, although the people who are arguing absolutely follow that mentality. Mm-hmm. But how are we going to remember? You've seen the meme of people breaking up the Berlin Wall with sledgehammers.
Yeah.
It's like, this wall's no longer here, and now I can't remember what it was even.
Yeah, exactly.
Get out of here. And another one that said, Satan is a pretty big character in the Bible. It would be something if you had a bunch of Satan statues all over the inside of a church, but it might make people question who it is you're worshiping.
Exactly.
So, it's not rocket science. It's like you said a minute ago. So, I'm old enough to remember when the seatbelt laws were first passed in Michigan.
Yeah.
There was an uprising of people. Don't you tell me what to do in my car. Motorcycle helmets. Don't tell me what to do with my brain.
Yeah.
Don't make me wear a mask. Do you remember the red M&Ms thing? You old enough to remember that shit?
Red M&Ms.
Dude. They decided to pull the red M&Ms because they found out the dye they were using was bad. If you used enough of that red dye, it was causing cancer or something.
What?
There was a national outcry.
My God.
Over red M&Ms. There's been an outcry over Aunt Jemima syrup.
Yeah.
People don't give a flying fuck about M&Ms or syrup. They just don't like change because, like you said, they've been so comfortable and complacent.
Oh, yeah.
Why does anything have to change?
See, I love 80s culture, but I've left so many 80s groups because all they do is separate. Say, Generation X, the last generation to be born before you pussies showed up. And it's like, what kind of mentality?
I'm Gen X, and those people are fucking assholes.
Right, exactly. It's just like, first of all, look at what you just posted. Just take a good look at it. Reflect. Sit back and reflect.
They're not going to.
And it's like, why do you dedicate so much time to being miserable and terrible to people? We're talking about a syrup bottle. And if it's got racist undertones, then yeah, get rid of it. Bye. I don't care. How is that so worth getting worked? You look like such a worse person Because one, you're getting fucking wild over a syrup bottle, and two, you're defending racism.
The people who are going to do that are going to deny racism anyway.
Right.
This has been the number one frustration for me in the last 4 months. It hasn't been COVID, it hasn't been the mask, it hasn't been any of that. During this great awakening that we're witnessing, as always, my number one frustration is watching the liberals and progressives, who are really good at talking about it on social media, continue to say things like, don't you understand blank, when they're talking to people who are pro-Trump, anti-mask, whatever, don't you understand? People are still speaking as if everybody has the same set of values. People are still speaking as if everybody is part of the same team. And I think one of the major hoodwinks to like American intellectualism in the last bunch of years was creating that term divisiveness.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a certain discussion, you're being divisive. This place has been divided for hundreds of years, and this is finally bringing it about. But I think that's one of those things where it's just convinced people like, you can't even mention the fact of things being polarizing because you're going to get labeled as divisive. But like, there's not one team. There is the people fighting for rights and for life. There are those fighting directly against that. And I'm not creating that to be divisive. I am accurately describing the reality of our society. And the more I see people continue to be confused as to why the anti-mask people would possibly do this or say that, from a psychological standpoint, you're displaying zero consideration for anybody outside of yourself. That shows a lack of compassion. It shows a lack of empathy. It shows a lot of intellectual stuff, lack of belief in science, etc., etc. When we start to do diagnoses, like I'm not going to sit here and have people think I'm being over the top and say everybody's a sociopath. But if you ask me how to describe a sociopath, I would say it's a person who's only interested in themselves and everybody else can get fucked. And that's at least half of the country.
Right.
So, like, let's not keep pretending everybody has a heart. Let's not keep pretending everybody wants to end racism. It's just not true. And in the immortal words of Zach De La Rocha, know your fucking enemy.
Yeah.
You can't educate them. We're going to have to topple them, and that's what we're finally seeing happen. And
I mean, even to this day, there are bullet holes riddling Emmett Till's memorial sign in Money, Mississippi. I mean, and that's all you need to know. I mean,
that's not all you need to know. I know
it's
exactly
in terms of in a.
Sorry, I'm not trying to diminish it.
Right. Like just for the simple fact that there are people out there who will shoot that sign in a case where an innocent kid, was. Well, I mean, we all know what happened to him, and if you don't know what happened to Emmett Till, just there's multiple documentaries on YouTube that you can watch to give you a good view. But I mean, right after the trial, they were found innocent, and then they were basically like, all right, who wants to buy our story? We'll tell you exactly what we did now that we have no punishment coming our way.
There's a thing happening right this minute. There are people asking for justice for Brianna.
Yeah.
She was the EMT who got killed in Kentucky.
Yeah.
I saw a thing today that made me want to vomit. There was an open website, I think it said supportbrianna.com or something like that, some big one. It was purchased by either the Louisville Police Department or from people within. And if you type in those words, the site that comes up says, support your good police.
Oh, yeah.
And it showed like links to how to pay into. If that's not the most cold-blooded, evil, like, I never use that word.
Right.
I don't believe in God, I don't believe in Satan. That shit is evil. To do that and think you're doing something like, who are you helping?
And the people defending it are like, well, they legally entered the house. They had a search warrant. And I'm like, you realize what you're defending right now? They're defending the murder of an innocent person.
They're defending the police.
Right.
They're doing both. But that's what I'm saying. When you say, do you know what you're doing? They don't. They don't believe in it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying. That's why those arguments aren't working, because we're trying to appeal to some kind of sense of logic that does not exist in that specific category. So when we see people and we're like, what are you trying to do, support racism? They don't believe in racism.
Right.
What they're doing is showing support for the boys in blue, subconsciously knowing those are the people who are protecting my white shit from all of those evil black people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard because like I even have a friend on my Facebook who's a police officer who I've known for 20 years, and he hasn't said anything. Mainly because I think a lot of them were told, like, don't say shit on Facebook.
Probably.
Don't say a fucking thing. And he's been pretty chill about everything that I've been posting. He hasn't been negatively engaging. And I think the tough thing is, you know, when you have, you know, rubber projectiles being fired at peaceful protesters in Kalamazoo, and then the next day you see a police officer, you know, shooting hoop with a kid, it's like, oh, look at that. And it's like, that doesn't help.
That does. People think I'm the meanest person alive because they will post what we're going to call positivity porn on social media. Oh, look, that cop's giving that black kid an ice cream cone. Cool. We also happen to know that there were pictures of cops kneeling at these protests, and those pictures would make the news. What didn't make the news was 30 seconds later, when those kneeling cops had tricked people into coming towards them, and then they maced their asses and beat them up.
Right.
And that happened in countless cities, but the news isn't going to broadcast that.
Yeah. And you know, I normally I'd say I hate to get off topic, but I really don't hate to get off topic because this has been the most important thing that's been happening in where we are.
This is the topic.
So, and it seems like it's here to stay, which is great, because there really needs to be some change. And it's the education level of these people who are defending history that really, you know, causes them to take the big L, because when they say, you know, you can't tear down these statues, this is our heritage, this is our history, it is a history of segregation. It's a history of the white ruling class. And there's facts to go behind that. That's not just, you know, shooting off bullshit. If you look statistically at when these Confederate statues went up, the biggest uprising of statues and commemorations was in the 1910s, when the whites were establishing their dominance post-Civil War in the South, and in the 1950s during the Civil Rights Movement. So you're not actually defending history. What you're defending is segregation and Jim Crow laws, and you're defending white supremacy. You're not defending Southern culture. I went to Stones River Battlefield in Murfreesboro, Tennessee a couple of years ago, and I've never had an experience like that ever in my life. And it was one of the most, and I went by myself, and I have a strong interest in the Civil War. I think it's any understanding of this country, and I view this same as historian Shelby Foote, as he said in the Civil War documentaries, that any understanding of this country's history has to be founded with an understanding of the Civil War, because it was this major crossroads in our country that we came to. And being able to experience that and to learn about the battle and how important it was for the Union's eventual victory in the Civil War, what went down during the 3 days that thousands and thousands of men were killed, and the fact that you could stand. There was a place called the Slaughter Pen, and it was basically these giant limestones in the woods that North and South soldiers thought was a safe haven, and it ended up being a death trap. And there were so many thousands of men killed in there that they had bodies just stacked up like a meat plant. There was a guy from Chicago who said it just reminded him of the slaughter pen back at the slaughterhouse, where they just had bodies stacked, and you stood there. And I don't think I've ever felt that kind of electricity before. Like, when I was there, I was sweating profusely, but my body, the hair on my arms and legs was just on end. So I had this electricity running through me, even though I was sweating, so I wasn't actually hot. And it was really humbling, because you really feel like there's something very important that happened here. And unfortunately, thousands of people died just so that people could be free, asterisk, you know. And I don't know, it's just one of those things that, like, once I visited there, I was like, okay, I really want to do my best to learn more about this, to understand it, because it's just been a long time. I mean, it's been a long time that this country has been around, even before white settlers came from Europe. And there's so much history that's been erased already, like legitimately erased.
Yep. Yeah,
and
white folks
cultures.
the white folks complaining about these Confederate statues coming down. I've never heard one of them complain about the fact that just about any Native American burial site holds zero sanctity to them.
Yeah.
Just tear it up, throw an oil line through it. We're going to move on here in a minute, but I went to a training a couple of years ago, and I appreciate what you just said. I think it is important for people to be a lot more in depth about the history of this country.
Yeah.
It's interesting too, though, because historians are almost always white people.
Right.
Because academics have always been gate-kept, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
There would have been no Civil War had it not been for the initial human lives being taken and traded and ruined in slavery.
Right.
So when Southerners try to pretend that that was a part of it, and historians even will talk about North versus South, even then, the people who are reporting on history seem uncomfortable really addressing white supremacy. It tends to come back down to politics, and it tends to come back down to Confederacy. So training I went to wasn't just an anti-racism training, it was anti-white supremacy training. Because people can get confused and think like, oh, well, maybe like Mexican people are racist towards Chinese people and vice versa. No. In this country, racism is the same as white supremacy because it's all white power, it's white money, it's white land ownership, it's white control of economics and academics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
This isn't just some theoretical debate about an idea of racism. This has to be direct addressing of white supremacy, period. I'm proud. I'm you know, you and I are in a mutual admiration society occasionally.
Yeah.
We're very proud to know each other. I think I've told you. People might want to politicize this statement as well, but I mean, I'm 44. I've known a ton of white men in my life.
Yeah.
You're right towards the top of that fucking list, dude. Like, the things I hear you say that you think about, that you care about, the work you'll do, it's incredibly rare. And I don't think you probably get the credit for that, but it is.
Well, I appreciate that, but at the same time, there's no. I do it because it's the right thing to do.
Oh, of course.
And at the end of the day, I want the focus point being on the subject matter.
Yep.
And I think it's just important that, you know, you have to take responsibility for what other people have done. I've done it my entire life, and it's to the point now where it's like you have to be against that. And it's just can't sit on the fence anymore. Like it used to be, you know, very simple to sit on the sidelines and go, yay, one side, but not take any action. That's not helping. That's not doing anything.
There's no neutral. There's no neutral. You're either defending the hurt or you're allowing the hurters to keep hurting people.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
so
take a team, dude. Pick a team.
I hope this is around for a while because, again, a lot of people, you know, one of the things that they bring up is like, how could you, you know, like, how could you destroy property and all this other stuff? And it's like, you know, there's an interview that was on TV recently. Well, they featured it on last week tonight with John Oliver. And I think Trevor Noah actually interviewed this girl, but she was fucking heated. And she's like, all you people criticizing these rioters for destroying Target and destroying Walmart and saying, how could you destroy your city? She's like, we don't own anything. Nope. None of this is ours. We never have owned anything. She's like, anytime we try to do one thing, we have to work twice, 3 times as hard.
Yep.
And then we're back to zero again. We're back to start. And so we've had enough. Yeah. So he's like, so you better be lucky that we're coming at you for equal rights instead of revenge.
Yep.
And that is something I couldn't agree with more.
There's the old phrase, hit 'em where it hurts.
Yeah.
If you have people who don't care about black murder, then compassion is not where it hurts. That means soft discussion doesn't work.
Yeah.
If they don't have an academic or intellectual understanding of the topic, logic doesn't work. If they've displayed that they just have a fundamental rooting into finances, meaning importance, then that's what you do. You go after it. And you just nailed it. Like, I had somebody say to me, why are you destroying your own community? And I'm like, do you consider the brick boxes in your town your community? Or do you consider the people you live with your community?
Right.
She said, both. And I said, well, then enjoy your a long-term emotionally fulfilling relationship with the library. Like, whatever the hell you're thinking about, like, probably don't own this property, probably don't own the house I'm renting, probably don't own a car, definitely don't own that fucking store.
Yeah.
So, like, burn every bit of it. I don't own a building, but, like, I'm a contractor. I'm essentially a small business owner. I am a small business. And I had somebody say to me, okay, fine, you want to keep talking theoretically about why it's okay to bust things and whatever. What happened if it was your place? I said, if it was my place, I would get hold of my insurance company the next day, and I would be stressed out because my shit got ruined, and I would go to the protest the same day because I know why it happened, and I accept that. That's what needs to happen.
Right.
Flat out.
People are triggered by shock.
Yep.
The shock value.
Yeah.
A couple of windows and things get rummaged in Kalamazoo, and all of a sudden it's like, uprising, and they get all heated. But it's like, but where's your anger towards the homeless community?
Right.
The homeless situation in our community. The fact that a lot of these people, with just a little help and a little understanding, will be fully functioning adults. Yeah. They just need just a little help. But the longer they go without help, the longer they go as being ignored, the harder it's going to be ultimately for them to get back on their feet.
It's interesting you brought that point up. Do you remember about 2 years ago now? There was a whole big push against the homeless facility in Kalamazoo. It's called the Gospel Mission.
Yeah,
As an LGBT person, I can tell you that place has a shit reputation for mistreating queer people, trans people. It's bad. So the city's answer was always, you need to work with the existing homeless shelter. And those of us who care were like, no, that's a broken system.
Yeah.
Just like this other thing. So that's when they turned part of Bronson Park into like a big homeless encampment. Do you remember there all the tents?
Yeah.
And people were doing clothing drives. There were people coming down to like help with job applications. It was very much like a small scale part of what happened in Portland, where they're kind of sectioning off. People only cared at that point because they had to drive by and look at a huge group of homeless people in quote unquote their park. And then the bulldozers came in and knocked over everything that people had been working to build.
Yeah.
And then those people who cared so much about the park didn't go and enjoy the park because they never did in the first place. They just didn't want to see change happening.
Yeah. I'm curious if, because I wrote a story back in, it was February, about a homeless shelter for the LGBTQ community opening in Detroit.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be a $10 million facility that they're, and there's also a $10 million homeless shelter that is, I don't know if they broke ground, or said they were supposed to break ground this spring through Kalamazoo Gospel Ministries. It used to be Kalamazoo Gospel Mission. Apparently there's supposedly be a new homeless shelter here in Kalamazoo, but again, it's, people need to be pissed about all of this. Yeah. When you take a problem and you go, but what about this? And it's like, stop ignoring the problem. You're not helping. Like, you should be pissed about all that. Like when people say, well, cops murder more white people than black people. And you're fine with that?
Well,
if that's the truth, then you're okay with that?
That's an amazing example. We would rather almost brag that more white people get killed just so we don't have to address or try to change black people getting killed. We'd rather just focus on all these white people. And by the way, let's be fair about that. When you are, I don't know, I think between 10 and 15% of the American populace is black Americans.
Yeah.
I think it's like between 40 and 50 or something is white. Statistically speaking, I would expect it to be at least 5 times higher or more. But then you look at prison rates, and then you look at unemployment rates, you look at property ownership, you look at representation in government, CEO, et cetera, it couldn't be any clearer. The picture couldn't be any clearer. And I don't know what point we wanted to start with, but this idea of people just not wanting to acknowledge the problem is the major crux of what's going on with the hashtag Speak Up movement right now.
Yeah, which is huge. Well, especially in professional wrestling. Like, that's something that's really blown up. And, again, you can either be a part of it and go, wow, that's messed up, and start supporting these people who are speaking out and really risking their own well-being, because people are freaking crazy. And when you're dealing with the wrestling fan community, There's no shortage of crazies there. And
Cult of Cornette.
yeah. Some of our favorite athletes have been pretty much exposed.
Yeah.
And you know, I've got all sorts of friends. I got all sorts of people on my Facebook. I can't change anybody for who they are, and that's not what the point of my post was supposed to be about. It was mainly about, if you're in a position of power, you know, people are starting to become empowered and become, you know, recognized for the things that they've gone through, the struggles that they faced, and they're also finally getting some confidence because they've been beat down and they've basically felt threatened, and they're starting to not feel threatened anymore. It's starting to just go, you know what? As scared as I've been, I'm gonna come out and I'm gonna talk about what's happened. And unfortunately, they've had to deal with that. And on top of that, some of our favorite wrestlers have kind of fallen into this group.
Yeah. This is a tiny little sliver of what's been going on, but I mean, I told you a little bit about, like, when I began to transition in 2014.
Yeah.
I backed away from most things that I had done previously because I considered those to be like male or heavily like masculine activities.
Right.
I was in that band forever, and I stepped away from heavier music because, I mean, hello, it's a sausage fest
Right.
for the most part. Wrestling was a part of that too because most fans are men. And it just seemed like, is there going to be a space in this for me? Not just as a woman, but as a trans person too?
Yeah.
Yo, that's pretty risky. So, the very first, I'm not going to get into specifics, but the very first wrestling thing I did get involved with, post-transition,
Yeah.
did result, it wasn't a huge thing, but it did result in an issue happening with some talent where I felt singled the fuck out
Yeah.
and mistreated.
Well, it wasn't even the fact that you felt you were singled. It was,
but like, it was the very first thing I had even tried to do in 5+ years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like I said, it was a sliver compared to the reality that most people have to deal with on the daily.
Right.
But I mean, that's all the proof I needed right then and there. I also want to dip back because we're about to get into some specifics. When we had the Bastion of Excellence, Derek Wolf on the podcast a bunch of months ago, we were talking about when CM Punk did the pipe bomb.
Yeah.
Remember? And we asked what Mr. Wolf thought of it, and I remember him saying, like, he thought that basically anybody put in that position could have done the same. And I remember being like, nope,
Right.
that's not a thing. And he said maybe the Miz, and I again like, this ain't gonna happen. You and I were on the same page of Punk had it rough. Punk came up, you know, in a rough house. He came up in the punk scene. Like,
Yeah.
you get a whole new level to your intensity. You get a whole new level to your like edge when you've lived that kind of life.
Yeah.
That I have, and that you have, and that CM Punk has. I've been telling you for a while. My favorite guy in the last couple of years has been David Starr.
Yeah.
And David Starr is no CM Punk, but he's another guy that gets described as being like iconoclast. You know, like like the cult of personality, bigger than most people's personalities would ever be. Jumps off the screen, jumps off the page. That's what drew me to him. That intensity, that like bigger than life stuff he could tap into.
Yeah.
The reaction you could get from the crowd. I think I'm now realizing there is a direct formula because of the things we're finding out about David Starr now. And I'm wondering if all of that bombastic attitude and his ability to play these characters partially came from the fact that he had to live a double life based on how he was treating women in his life for a long time. And of course you're going to be a good actor. You've been doing it for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Well, you believe it. It becomes your reality.
You know? And we're getting way ahead of the thing, but like, I don't know. Do you want to do more of an intro before I get really rolling?
No, just, yeah.
So like, my friend John got a hold of me last weekend, and he said, "Are you following all of this stuff?" Because I don't know what stuff you're referring to. And he sent me a couple like Twitter feeds, and it showed like all of these women starting to come forward.
Mm-hmm.
And he said it all started with David Starr, and I went, "You've got to be fucking kidding me! That's my #1 favorite wrestler on the planet." And I have felt like I've been questioning my own judgment. I've been feeling like a chump because he one of his nicknames was the Bernie Sanders of professional wrestling.
Yeah.
He gave up his U.S. citizenship because he hates the politics here. He thinks it's bullshit that there's not a universal Medicare for people.
Right.
He thinks that it's bullshit that there's such wealth and distribution gaps, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So he left the country. It's something I aspire to do, frankly.
Yeah.
He was like a literal hero. He went and started. He's one of the last guys to be trying to unionize wrestling again, which always gets people blackballed anyway. Dude, I don't know if you and I really talked about it. Did you know about his company that he helped start called Independent? It was a European.
I think you mentioned, you'd mentioned it once.
Yeah. I saw the merch at his shows and people wearing it at his matches, and I just assumed it was like his merch.
Yeah.
No. I think he did a thing where he got together with other wrestlers and was like, if we want to start effectively our own HMO pool of we want to be able to provide medical care for wrestlers. We want to be able to provide a little bit of financial coverage if you go down and out. They were going to sell this merchandise with all proceeds going back into the general fund, and that was going to be people being able to access that if they needed it.
Wow.
It was a creation of a truly communal socialist financial situation.
Yeah.
That was all David Starr. And so to find out that he was the number one spark that started this forest fire, I mean, I'm basically over it now because I've had to kill off a lot of my favorites over the years because I care and I can't separate the artist from the art.
Yeah. And I just told you about this earlier. There was a friend on my Facebook who had posted a meme, a Ferris Bueller meme, and it was about who you understand as you go through life, who you sympathize with. And the last one was Ed Rooney, and the actor who played Ed Rooney, who was also in Beetlejuice and Mom and Dad Save the World, is a convicted sex offender, and he owned property which depicted underage boys, and he was convicted, found guilty. And so I left a comment, and I was like, yeah, minus the whole pedophilia thing.
Which is, 100% fair.
Right. And so she messaged me, and she's like, rude comment, and then she deleted me off Facebook, and I was like, not really, but I was like, I wasn't trying to insult you or anything, but when somebody does something like that, I can't be like, well, yeah, they're a piece of shit, but God, I love that character. It's it's no longer important to me.
It's not my lane, but I have enough black friends to be way up to speed on the whole R. Kelly issue in the black community. Right? Everybody knows what that dude's been up to for ages. There's no question at this point. And yet, there are millions and millions and millions of people who I just like the song. Whatever, you have the right to do what you're going to do.
Yeah.
I just literally can't wrap my brain around that because I am the absolute opposite.
Well,
I can't possibly look past that kind of stuff.
There's a difference, and again, I think people love to be right, even if they don't have proof. So, for instance, when this whole thing about R. Kelly came out, we only had about 2, maybe 3 songs that we played of his on KFR, the station I work for in Kalamazoo. Our brand manager took those songs out of rotation. Then you had people messaging us like, well, why don't you take Michael Jackson off as well because he molested those kids? And I'm like, okay, there was never any proof of that.
Well, we do have those kids coming forward though, talking about it.
There was, that's where you have to figure out where you're going to draw the line. I mean, you have a lot of women who are coming forward. They had the Surviving R. Kelly documentary, and then there was discrepancies with the Michael Jackson documentary that came out because once it came out, naturally, anything you do behind intense music and you have people talking about it, well, then discrepancies came out with the timing of everything. So HBO pulled the show because they were like, well, we don't want to be spreading, if there's discrepancies with the story they're telling, it gets super dicey.
It's an imperfect system because there's no perfect way to do it. But
as a fan of Michael Jackson's music, and as somebody who that was the first guy I ever listened to, really, really listened to, and learned how to sing, I'm the first person to say that guy's life was completely effed up. Yep. Just beyond anything I really even know.
His dad was an absolute monster.
Oh yeah. And the traumatization that he went through as a kid, forced him into this life of excess and madness. He had some serious mental problems as an adult that probably was never figured out because he was always on camera and always performing and always writing. And he never... I view it as a guy who never had time to really stop and go, I need to heal. I need to work through some shit. Because his whole life was entertainment. So there can't be any excuses made for anything that, you know, there's... I don't know. If I had a kid and Michael Jackson wanted that kid to stay the night at his house, I'd be a little apprehensive about that. Any adult. Well, it doesn't matter who, but I...
No, 100% agree. And that goes to show, though, I think, the difficulty people have with giving up their favorite stuff. You know, we like what we like.
Right, exactly.
And most people are never going to be put into a position where they're really forced to have to choose one over the other. Because nobody's ever going to force you.
I would be devastated if something about Iron Maiden came out that was, like, incriminating. Yeah. I'd be done. I'd be, like, so... I don't know. I guess, like you said, it depends on your personality. Yeah. It depends on if things are more important than morality.
I was really interested when David Bowie and his information started coming out. There's a woman who says that he was her first sexual experience, and she speaks of it in these glowing terms.
Yeah.
You know, she was like 13 or 14 though when it happened.
Yeah.
And it sparked. I mean, I've been a part of these debates for years and years and years anyway, but that was one of the first mainstream examples that I saw.
Yeah.
Where there are people who, again, if you're a Bowie fan, I mean, you have to be at least a little bit comfortable with queerness. Like, there's no way to distinguish between those
exactly.
things. So that tells me that if you're a fan, you're more likely leaning left anyway. And to see people scramble and find ways to excuse away what is inexcusable adult-to-child sexual activity.
Right, exactly.
Was really eye-opening for me. People like this J.K. Rowling thing going on right now.
Oh, yeah.
Talking shit about trans people all over the planet. I've got people like, well, you know, but I still like her stories. Like, I've watched those movies and I thought they were pretty good too. And now I'm recontextualizing my relationship with them based on who I know her to be as a human being.
Right, exactly.
I would do it even if I wasn't a trans person. Because I care.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. And like, you really just stepping back to the Michael Jackson thing, like when the first allegations came out, it's like, this is freaking serious business. And then he was, I think it was like a no contest or something. They didn't...
Probably settled it out of court.
Yeah, and I watched a documentary one time that had these guys that were really good friends with Michael Jackson that you've never heard of before because they were not part of the limelight. They weren't part of the crowd that was seen on camera. These were people that he really trusted and got some awful advice. And you know, I got into it one day with somebody on Facebook, and they were slamming Michael Jackson for paying off these parents. I'm like, well, you say paying off. What happened is they settled out of court. That doesn't happen in my world. If I have a child and I know for a fact that something happened to them, I don't care who it was, especially if they were someone along the stature of Michael Jackson, I would want to make sure for a fact that not only do I get coverage financially for damages, but I'm going to make sure this dude spends the rest of his life in prison. And if you stop anywhere short of that, what kind of person are you? Like, how can you sit there on one hand and say, oh, what Michael Jackson did was terrible, even though there was never a conviction towards him, but not condemn the parents who are fine enough with just his money?
That's the part in the discussion where some people will get idealistic and say, well, they'll invoke should at that point. Well, it shouldn't have to be a concern. But it is.
Right.
We don't need to go into that theoretical realm because we have a literal realm right here where it does matter.
Exactly. So that's my biggest argument with that whole thing is that there was never an outcome, and it basically killed the guy. What killed him off the bat was that Pepsi commercial when his hair lit on fire.
Jesus.
That began his...
I'm going to work it all the way back to saying that he was dead before he ever left the Jackson 5.
Oh, yeah.
He was so irreversibly fucked up by the way his father treated him, the adult responsibility heaped on a young mind already at that age. Anybody coming through that level, even if you weren't being abused the way he and his siblings were by the dad, think of Drew Barrymore. You know what I mean? Like, she's doing great now, but God, she shouldn't even be alive probably. Yeah. Some kind of shit she went through at a young age. It's like, I hear you. I would be the same. There was never be a rich enough, there's nobody famous enough or rich enough to make me think it's okay for an adult person to want to hang out with my 9-year-old kid.
Right.
At all.
And if anything happened, to just take money for it and be fine with that.
Oh no, I'm one of those people, and it's a hot take, but I would take your head before I took your money.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Flat out.
That's my main point, is like, we don't know. That's the thing. There's no hard evidence that says, yes, it fucking happened. Because they tried that, and there was a whole bunch of discrepancies with their timeline and the things that actually happened that they have proof of, which caused, like I said, it's one of those things where I as a person would be devastated if they had hard evidence that said, yep, it absolutely happened. Because the only thing we know about that guy is what we saw on camera. And that was like, literally, anytime he wasn't sleeping.
It's a tricky one for me, because we're about to get into talking about a majority of the people who are speaking up against wrestling right now are women.
Yeah.
And we were saying before we turned the mics on, there's always this debate about, well, she doesn't have proof.
Yeah.
So how are we supposed to do anything with that? We do have people saying Michael Jackson did it. They were kids at the time. And then we've got people saying, well, there are inconsistencies. They were kids.
Right.
It was 30 plus years ago. And there's been sensationalism in the media ever since. And their parents. And. You know
It's
what I mean?
strange. Well, and another thing I take from that, too, is Corey Feldman. Corey Feldman is a huge advocate for exposing pedophilia. And on the other hand, was really close with Michael Jackson as a kid. And
well, that makes me wonder why
it's curious that...
why he's such an advocate.
Right, but it's strange because he's always stood up for him. He's always said that there was never anything weird going on. Yeah. And part of me thinks is like, well, is it because he's traumatized by it and he's trying to, fight against that? Or is he being legitimate?
I mean, there's a third option, which is David Starr, without question, has emotionally and physically abused a multitude of women based on their stories.
Right.
And I'm quite certain he's hung out with a whole lot of women he never did that to.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it doesn't have to necessitate Feldman being abused to prove that other people have been. It's just, it's such a weird microcosm of, like, we all live in a fishbowl. And, if it was just some random guy in the street who doesn't have clout,
right,
who isn't everybody's favorite musician, who isn't a celebrity, who isn't seen as some kind of god among men, you can look at it more objectively and just say, yeah, fuck that guy. But then you get a Michael Jackson or this big hero or an R. Kelly. Or, it's hard for people to distinguish because most people can't even realistically sit down and figure out why they're voting conservative.
Right, exactly.
You're not even going to critique your own form of thinking. How are you possibly going to critique that thing? But like, you and I were saying, we tend to lean towards believing victims because historically their voices are silenced because more people want to believe in the majority.
Right,
Nobody wants to
exactly.
think about the ugly parts.
Yeah, that's really my big conflict is being a Michael Jackson fan, is that as soon as that happened, as soon as those allegations, there's always going to be a dark cloud over that.
Totally.
And there's a part of me that's always like, I really hope that didn't happen because it would be devastating because that's his message in his music was the exact opposite of the allegations against him, which is, it's so conflicting. But again, you're starting to see, I want to hear from as many people as possible. I want to hear from people who were victims. And like I said, we live in this really weird world where you got a lot of people who say, oh, well, if you're a fan of his, it's very easy to be, supportive of them. At the same time, I take someone like that and I'm like, yeah, it's not a good look. Either way you look at it, whether he did it or he didn't do it, it's kind of just like a huge stain on his career.
Sure.
And even worse, could have been a incredibly devastating thing for innocent kids who trusted him.
Yep.
You just don't know. Right. And that's the struggle is, then you have to make that decision.
People think it's cold-blooded to say, you know what, I am going to choose sides. I am going to believe the victim. Because so many people run and say, well, what about if it's a false allegation?
Yeah.
We've done social statistics on this stuff for ages, with sexual assault specifically. In any way we can do metrics and actually measure it with any accuracy, I mean, it's in the high 90% that people say it because it happened.
Yeah.
And people say, well, show me the evidence. Show me the evidence that they didn't do it. Well, that's not how the legal system works. The legal system isn't the hand of God. We created that system whenever we invented it. Human beings created that, which means it's open to flaw. And
Yeah.
Clearly it's flawed. So when I brought this up a little while ago, but we're finding tens of thousands, and it's happened so many places, I'm going to say hundreds of thousands, untested rape kits at police stations all over the country. Every one of those tests is a woman or a person with a vagina who said, I was raped, take this stuff from me so I can prove it. We're going to go ahead and just use the number 100,000 people then were ignored, and there was no proof, so fuck you, you lied. I'm going to take you seriously when you say it, because this is the cold-blooded part. The people being accused are probably in a power position anyway, and it's your turn.
Yeah.
Sorry. Hey, somebody's going to get it. I'm sick of watching the 98% who are telling the truth get it. I'm ready to start listening to them without question.
Yeah.
Because, hey, got to go around.
A lot of people, and again, like I've mentioned this on Facebook too, is that a lot of people think that they're holier than thou. And I made a Facebook post recently talking about how, like, you know, people are going to start calling you out on shit. And some people were posting, like, you're not going to get me to stop joking about this. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't do anything. Like, nobody, you know, you're not in a position of, like
influence.
Yeah. It's just like, I know that's you, and I know you're never going to change that. But what I'm saying is that, like, I'll be the first to admit that I have incriminating evidence against me in high school of using language that I do not agree with today.
Dude.
Yeah. And it's not, and nothing on the racial spectrum, but on the LGBTQ spectrum, totally inappropriate, totally uncool. And again, life is about change and it's about evolution, but it's always why when I see people, you know, defending violence in cartoons and saying, I grew up and I was just fine. It's like, it's a completely different world.
Well, that's the thing, though. When people say I'm just fine, those people are looking around at this world and saying it's A-okay. That's not fine.
Yeah.
If you're still saying my parents beat my ass and I'm fine, well, are you a person who beats your kids' asses? Yeah. You're not fine.
Right, exactly.
That's not fine.
It's another big problem that they don't realize that, like, you have to get better. You really do. That's why my brother and sister don't use violence on their son.
Like
there's
psychology.
no spanking. There's no.
Yeah.
It's all. And I said that since I was a teen. I was like, it's all psychology with these kids.
Your brain doesn't understand the difference between a punishment beating and just a beating. Your brain still produces cortisol. You still have PTSD. You still, like, people just want to make their shit make sense. And I've had friends who do the same that you just mentioned. Like, forget your sphere of influence. Somebody says, you're not going to make me stop telling insensitive jokes. Okay. Then I'm going to label this clearly for you. You're not going to want to hear it. Not you, but whomever.
Yeah.
In this moment, you are prioritizing. You're saying, I'm choosing this over that. You make a choice, you're choosing this over something. It's more important to me to be able to make tasteless jokes. They're tasteless because they're going to hurt somebody out here. It's more important to me to have the freedom to keep doing that than to try to be sensitive to people.
Right.
And then they'll go, no. Then make it make sense for me. And they can't, because I just told you the truth.
Right, exactly.
You're keeping it because you want to tell your jokes because you don't care about the effects.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing. Like, and then, like, going back and, like, looking at who I was back then, and you know, it was a completely different me. And it was a me who was finally breaking out of a shell, and a shell that was basically comprised of fear and hurt and suicidal thoughts. And it was me finally expressing myself and being comfortable with myself. But that's the thing, is that was still a time period where, you know, being a part of the LGBTQ community was still very, you know, dicey. Especially, you know, where I lived, you know, which was I don't know if you really could consider Rochester conservative, but they, you know, there's a lot of rich people out there, or middle class to upper middle class people. And I don't know, I was raised on one hand to respect people and to love them for who they are. And then as I'm getting older, I'm seeing the same people who are around me teaching me those things not being that way. And I think people confuse, you know, I was raised to be like this. But when I say I was raised, what I mean is, there was a point where I decided I gotta also have to raise myself and choose who I'm putting around me and who I'm letting in.
Yep.
And, it takes time to work through trauma and to work through things you've gone through. And when you work through those things, you start changing your vocabulary. You start changing the things that you say. You start changing the things you say with the things that you mean by them. And it's a whole point of growing and being a better person and understanding that, there's just some things that are not cool to say.
You want to hear something crazy? So my friend I told you, John, hits me up and he says, "Are you seeing all this shit with what's happening in wrestling?"
Yeah.
And then he tells me about David Starr. I felt myself, and I will willfully acknowledge I'm one of the more like radical feminist types you're going to meet.
Yeah.
I will eat your heart. I don't give a fuck about you. I do not care. Get it right. I caught myself for at least a few minutes unconsciously trying to convince myself that it can't be true.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I'm talking with my friend who happens to be gay, mind you.
Yeah.
He's a man. I found myself, it's so weird, I have to go into a little bit of detail here. I heard myself doing it, I wrote it, texting him. I was almost explaining why it might be okay. Which is crazy,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's absolutely crazy.
Right.
And it took me a good half an hour to kind of sort through it all and make it make sense. But there was that little blip of time. And here's why it happened. And you've been open and talked about how you were not the most, like, chill person in younger life.
Yeah, exactly.
And I told you I was the same way. There's a whole level of shit that I went through because I lived as a boy and then a man for such a long time.
Yeah.
And there are so many pressures to do that. And I often have conversations with my female friends now. And I'm like, there are so many layers to manhood and to a masculine existence that actually are infinitely harder than most women, and people will never give it credit because men are in the power positions, right?
Yeah.
But I was forced to follow all the same rules and all the same pressures and all the same insecurities.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a goddamn nightmare. And it made me mean. And it made me afraid to be honest, and show
Right.
feelings, etc. When I came out, it was in 2014, one of the very first things that occurred to me that was important for me to do was to reach out to all of my ex-partners and apologize. Because as soon as I realized like the truth of my existence and the direction I was moving, and part of that included really opening my eyes to the female experience,
Yeah.
I suddenly saw my entire relationship history of how I treated women, how I talked to women, how I made them feel, how I intentionally fucking emotionally abused them because I felt small. I got a hold of every single one of them and said, I don't expect anything from you. This isn't me trying to pat myself on the back. I'm not trying to get a forgiveness. I now realize how absolutely horrendous that was. I'm ashamed of myself. If anything, I want you to at least know, no matter what I said or did or made you feel, you're perfectly fine. It was all me.
Right.
And everyone except for one, and I do not blame her for not returning that message, said, it was a long time ago and I do appreciate it, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
I only did it because I felt so crushed in really realizing like what I had participated in and the things I had done and said again. And so when I'm seeing these accusations against David Starr, it was so close. I mean, without the moving parts, I was like, wow. It was like I was looking into a mirror of some sort. And I think that's why I took a good 10, 15 minutes to like differentiate. And it's hard to give up your favorite stuff.
Right.
We were touching on that too. I've had to do it a bunch of times. And it was just this tornado of self-actualization and heartbreak again of like, God, I've been looking up to this guy. I was even going to contact him by email and ask him how to, like, I'm thinking about moving out of the country because fuck this place.
Yeah.
He's the only person I know who honestly has done it. I don't know him.
Yeah.
But I figured I could explain my situation. He might give me some tips. And now all of this, and people talking about how he was so emotionally abusive. And I didn't hear that he had direct sexual assault allegations against him.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of manipulation, a lot of gaslighting.
A lot of it, yeah. That kind of falls in, once you cross a certain, I feel once you cross a certain line of abuse, whether it's mental, a lot of that goes into it. I mean, one of my friends, her ex-boyfriend hit her up and he's like, I just want to be friends and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, okay. And she's going through a lot of mental struggles herself. Well, this motherfucker just sends her 3 pages of, you're a piece of shit and I'm going through all this. And I'm like, he was like this from the beginning when he reached out to you, but you didn't see it. It had yet to be revealed. It's not like he just, like a light went off. I was like, he was like this when he contacted you. So, again, it's just built into that DNA to be like that. And I don't know. I've never understood being controlling that or manipulative. I am not innocent by any means in my relationship history. And I can absolutely call out, and I plan to actually, you and I talked about this, is writing a book about just everything that I've been through and working through it and understanding it and being able to look at myself and going, okay, you really screwed up here, and that, but it's important, Some people look like, well, isn't that going to be messed up? Well, yeah, it is, but that's the only way you really heal and you can, move on with your life and not.
And I think that's why I'm so impatient with people who can't be bothered to put a mask on, or can't be bothered to think about like why they like the things they do.
Yeah.
Because some of us are willing to take a metaphorical dagger and slit ourselves from groin to throat and spill it all out, and go through the pain and the discomfort and the misery and all of it to come to terms with who we are and what we've done.
Yeah.
And improve for the sake of not just ourselves, for everybody else.
Yeah.
So, we could do this for 10 hours, but... So, David Starr was the first one. A bunch of names have come up on that list. I mentioned Dave Christ earlier. He's gone. I don't even know what his accusations were, but they didn't even bother investigating. They just fired him, which tells me that there was some good evidence.
I did see an Instagram post from his ex-girlfriend who just claimed that he was emotionally and physically abusive. And again, I'm not the one making these claims. This is somebody else, but again,
this is just us reporting the news here.
Yeah, exactly. It's just from what I saw on this girl's Instagram, talking about how just a couple. I won't get into details, but from her recollection, there was some physical and mental abuse that was going on there, calculated too. So definitely some issues there, and I think Impact saw that. And
Jordan Devlin from NXT UK was similarly accused.
Yeah.
There were some pictures included in some posts from his ex-partner, and she was covered in bruises.
Jesus.
I think some of it, she was like, and this is only from the waist down, or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's gross to say, but if you think about where those were, if you were wearing all your clothes, you probably wouldn't see them.
Right.
Which goes to prove a calculated, approach to violence.
Yeah.
It's not just mindless, it's calculated.
Well, I even, and just speaking plainly, I'd even be super careful when I was doing radio in Detroit, because people were making fake accounts under apps I didn't even have and messaging people. Because you're in a big market, we had a lot of communication with listeners, a lot of listeners from high school, and there were a lot of people I had to block. I wasn't used to that. I wasn't used to, this was a brand new thing for me. It's my first job in radio. We had a lot of communication with high schoolers who trusted us, who liked us as entertainers and as people, because we were kind to them. We'd bring them into the studio. You formed friendships with these people because you were a part of their everyday life. And there were many people I had to block because I was just getting sent things that I'm like, I could get, this is not good, I'm not that guy. And I've had to, I had to block people on Twitter. And then I even had somebody who created a name under, I don't know, some kind of messaging site, under my name messaging people. And I'm like, that's messed up, man. I had actually messaged them with a screenshot of my profile saying, who the hell do you think you are, Right. And it's scary. It's a scary world. But at the same time, we recognize that, luckily I work with people who are like,
That's why I'm so into transparency.
Right.
I want to be the cleanest window possible. So if anybody ever tries anything, I'm like, I know, everybody already knows that. I put everything on Front Street.
Right, exactly.
I don't need people trying. No, it's all out there already.
Yeah, so it's I'm glad that there is a speak up movement also happening too amongst all this, because I think what it's coming down to is that wrongdoings are just being called out. And I think in the world of professional wrestling too, you have this, you know, you've always if you're a professional wrestler, yes, you are, you're in this weird world that, and just from a fan perspective, you see the stories of professional wrestlers like, you know, Jake the Snake Roberts, who's luckily doing much better with his life now, but the demons that can follow you. And really, you're in this position of power because you're idolized.
Yeah.
And
influence is absolutely.
Yeah. So that's why none of these stories are really surprising. They're very unfortunate,
Right.
but it's just harsh.
You know, it occurred to me, and this was, I realized I had a little pocket of naivete in myself. You know, you and I were just doing cartwheels at how excited we were to even just be able to interview wrestlers on the show.
Yeah.
And then we find out we're going to do commentary and just jacked up a whole new level.
Yep.
And I'll admit, I mean, that it continues to be like my biggest, like, starry-eyed, like, oh my God, finally, wrestling,
Yeah.
you know. I think that made it so that I was willing to at least entertain the possibility that, like, maybe all these people are somehow better than the rest of society.
Yeah.
There's no reason for it other than that it was one of my favorite things.
Right,
you know?
exactly. That's why I really like Kalamazoo, though, and Josh Raymond, too.
Oh my God, that's kind of
because
what I was about to say. Yeah.
Josh has been very cool with everything, and not only cool with everything that we're about, but he's been very vocal about how appreciative he is of us, and likewise of how appreciative we are for him looking out for us and allowing us to be a part of something that's just, it's literally living out a dream.
And you know, I told you from the get, like, I think I told you and T, like, we're doing this show. I'm a semi-known person in town from profession, living here long enough, musician, et cetera, et cetera. People will look for an opportunity to shit on if they can find a trans person to shit on,
Yeah.
or a queer person to shit on. And it hasn't happened that I'm aware of as it pertains to this. But then when we met Josh and the guys from the company, when Josh said, yeah, we want you to do commentary,
Yeah.
that was one of the very first things I said to him too. Like, I always do that. It sucks, but that's my social reality, is there are people who will absolutely bite at the opportunity to try to humiliate or ruin or hurt or whatever, right? And the fact that Josh has stepped up and been like, yeah, fuck him, you know, you're on the team.
Yeah.
When he hit me up a little while ago to talk about, you know, potential shows coming up, I think I told you, I go so hard on social media and I don't pull punches with people. I've been actively worrying, like, God, am I doing this too much? Am I going to get fired from this gig?
Right.
And the fact that he said no is the exact opposite of that, and how supportive he is of BLM and things are happening. Like,
Yeah.
I wanted to be in wrestling anyway. This is, I'm just, like, proud to be associated with somebody of the character level of Josh Raymond.
Well, and on top of that too, you know, we've only known so many wrestling federations as a nationwide event. When I mean that is like WWE, you know, NXT, you know, Impact, Ring of Honor, you know, all these big, you know, these big federations, and then you have these local federations, these local companies that are started up, and you're starting to see a change of the guard, because you've got, you know, WWE, which is highly controversial, and in the way that they treat people, the material that they allow, the ownership, and then you've got a local company that Josh is running, where it's very inclusive. Everybody's welcome. Everybody's made to feel welcome. Diversity is celebrated, and it's not tolerated when people are being shit on. And just knowing the majority of people who partake in those events, a lot of them feel the same way as well.
Yeah, which is amazing. We're kind of bopping around, but I want to come back to the list.
Yeah.
It's growing every day, and as of a couple of days ago, there were over 100 accusations being levied against less than 100 people, but still, I mean, tons and tons of people have been fired now, displaced. Will Ospreay has been one of our shared favorites for a while.
Mm-hmm.
His is a unique story, and his specifically reminded me of, this is what really made me finally turn the page and go, oh God, now I see why I missed this. I look up to these wrestlers because it's been my favorite thing for 35 plus years.
Yeah.
Most of these names that are coming up are the high school quarterback.
Right.
They're the most popular guy in school.
Mm-hmm.
And what's that guy known for historically? Like, not so much now with Gen Zers, hopefully, but like, to find out that Will Ospreay wasn't assaulting people, but that he had gone out of his way with multiple federations to tell them, if you book this woman, I'm not going to wrestle here. And the reason he was blackballing her is because she had accused one of his friends of sexual impropriety.
Yeah.
Okay, great, you didn't abuse somebody. That person had hopes and dreams and had every right to be part of a profession that we all love. And you made it your business to prevent it just because.
And again, going back to like the things that people hold importance of, if somebody had accused your friend of doing something, I would be very interested in finding out why they had come forward, what they had to say, what their accusations were. And by blackballing somebody, it's not a good look. It's saying that you've got something to hide and that you're using your leverage as your reputation as leverage.
We call that social capital.
It's just not a good look. And again, it just makes you lose respect for somebody. It's like, yeah, you didn't physically go out and do something, but you defended somebody who more than likely did and didn't go about it the right way.
Right. And let's complete that sentence. By defending the person, you actively ruined professional opportunity and probably a lifetime of love for this for this company.
Yeah.
Not company, but you know what I mean, sport.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple interesting ones. I mean, there are obviously the clear-cut, ugly, gross examples of people doing stuff. Jack Gallagher from WWE was just fired without question. That means that there was some proof, right?
Yeah.
They went ahead and fired El Ligero and another person from NXT UK. I think Jordan Devlin was on the list. I don't know if they fired him or not. I think they're still looking at it. That goes to show me already. He's one of the most popular people from NXT UK, and he's getting looked at. The fact that there would be cherry picking happening within WWE does not surprise me in the least.
Yeah.
But Marty Scurll, I mentioned before that we got on the air here, we all know who he is, and he's like the big guy at Ring of Honor.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of calling the whole show there. He's another one. He's not being accused of rape or like a violent assault. Somebody's come forward and said, I was, I think, 16, and he was around 25, 26.
Yeah.
Wherever they were in a country or a place where the legal age of like
consent,
thank you, she'd reached it. And so now there's this thing happening where he'll say, yeah, I do remember that event. Yes, I do remember this person. I remember it being consensual.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this matters, and I think he even said it that way, this may not help, but it was legal.
Mm-hmm.
Hashtag cult of Cornette. Not everybody's in the Cornette thing, but I'm going to say anybody who's going to run forward and say she's looking for attention. She's trying to get her moment. As a person who now has to live with the reality of certain kinds of attention resulting in you not being able to sleep at night because you don't feel safe or being worried that people are trying to smear you without you knowing about it, that's not the kind of attention people want, I can promise you. So when people are coming forward and trying to find any way to disprove this thing, I'm going to be real curious how Ring of Honor plays it, because they are in a position where their meal ticket, without question, is Marty Scurll right now. And if they keep him, they're effectively saying, well, we frown on the fact that there's almost a double age thing happening here.
Yeah.
Clear child, clear adult. But it was legal. That's the same argument that, it used to be legal for men to beat their wives.
Yeah.
It was absolutely legal to own slaves.
Yeah.
Like, legality means fuck all to me.
Right. Legality doesn't mean...
Morality.
Morality, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I'm watching that one, and I'll be real curious how it plays out. We haven't even touched on the fact that Cornette and his wife have come up on this list by a bunch of people. And this was the one that made me really wake up to the fact that when men run forward and try to deny sexual violence or abuse towards women, I thought that was 100% about sexism and misogyny. Then I saw some male wrestlers come forward and say, Cornette and his wife groomed me, They threatened to end my career. They threatened to do all these things to me if I didn't sleep with his wife, etc., etc. I saw people treat that guy the exact same way that they've treated women throughout history. Show me the proof. You're trying to get attention. I mean, it was like a mirror of the exact same treatment, and that's what made me realize it's not just about sexism and misogyny. It might all be about protection of masculinity, flat out. Circle the wagons around maleness at that point in time.
Yeah.
And there are still people coming forward about, how are you going to make a man do something he doesn't want to do? How are you going to, so I saw people saying, what the hell is grooming?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, good
well, it's the same
Lord.
thing with Keith Lee, too, like how he just came out and...
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
What do you think, though, of this Cornette and his wife thing? Like, I mean, you're above board on all this stuff, but when they say to a man, we want you to sleep with this woman, and I hear she's attractive, I even looked her up. I got people saying, Jesus, I wish somebody would tell me I have to sleep with a woman. I bet you don't. It's a pretty different situation, but like, I don't know, you're a man. Like, how do you perceive of that? Like,
I get uncomfortable with things. Just me personally, everybody's different, and I don't know. I get uncomfortable with certain situations, and I can't imagine being in a situation where I'm doing literally what I have been dreaming of doing my entire life, and then being in a position where I feel like I'm not being forced, but heavily encouraged that I should be doing this. And not only that, but to be
under threat of you losing everything.
Right, exactly. It's got to be difficult. It's got to be difficult. And I personally feel like with who Jim Cornette is openly, that there's no defense for him. The guy is already like one of the lowest pieces of shit. I mean, to have so much hatred in your heart to say that you will live to piss on somebody's grave and have a picture of it. I mean, that's
What was he talking about?
Take a guess.
Was it Omega?
No.
Meltzer?
Russo.
Oh, Jesus.
In
Yeah,
the Dark Side of the Ring episode where they talk about the Montreal screw job,
Yeah.
it ends with Russo and Cornette bitching about each other.
Of course.
Naturally, the two biggest egos in the room.
I've never heard Russo say anything about wanting to kill Cornette or his
No,
piss or shit on
because
his grave.
he laughs at it. He's like, "It's wrestling, bro. It's not a big deal." And Cornette's like, "Don't you say that ever again." He's like, "Whatever, it's just wrestling." And Cornette's like, "Don't you ever say," So literally how that episode ends, he's like, "My wife's out of the will if it doesn't happen.
No kidding.
He's gonna make sure." Yeah, he's that serious about it. I'm like, that takes a lot of hate. That takes a lot of negative energy. That takes a lot, like, to live like that with that much animosity.
Yeah.
Means you are a chaotic person by nature, and you will do things completely different than the normal person.
I mentioned it. I don't remember if it was before we turned the mics on or not. The idea of when somebody tells you who they are, believe them.
Right.
Cornette's never come out and said, "I'm a racist, sexist, hateful, wrestling, abusive piece of shit."
Yeah.
But all of his behavior indicates that it's 100% who he is.
Mm-hmm.
The guy who's going to pretend that a bucket of chicken on your back on a motorcycle in Ethiopia isn't a racist statement is a guy who will say ridiculous shit and then try to lie to you about what he actually said and what he meant.
Mm-hmm.
That's duplicitous. It's dishonest. It's demonstrating insensitivity. I believe you, Jim. I believed you right then. I believed you way before that.
Yeah.
I do not have a single problem believing that he's participating in this stuff. Keith Lee is one of our mutual favorite people.
Yeah.
I love his eloquence. Did you read his release that he put out?
Yeah.
I'm going to introduce this first, and then let's dissect it a little bit. I applaud his bravery in stepping forward, and he's showing. I'm on the team here. I'm supporting people who are stepping forward. I haven't seen anybody address this yet, but I saw it immediately. He said this can happen to anyone. That's a version of saying it doesn't just happen to women.
Right.
Now, it's true, because it happened to him too. Here's the difference. The story he told was some super fan stalker putting some shit in his drink and him waking up in a hotel room all blacked out, which is horrifying and dehumanizing and dangerous and everything else you can imagine.
Yeah.
that wasn't him being a woman who is historically at the beck and call, and your safety relies upon if men are going to let you have it.
Yeah.
You're a 350-pound, giant, powerful man who drank a drink that somebody put some shit in. These other people are saying people in power positions in wrestling
Yeah.
held my fate over my head and did this to me. And he said, it doesn't just happen to you, it happened to me. But it didn't. It's not even remotely the same thing.
Yeah.
You're both taken advantage of. And I don't think in a million years he did that to do a hashtag not all survivors kind of thing.
Yeah.
But he kind of accidentally did.
Right, exactly. And it's not like it's something that he, I'm going to sit there and shame him for.
No.
But it's something that does need to be brought up when.
I'm glad you noticed that. Though.
Yeah, because it's not like it's important to say yes, it could happen to anybody. However, let's not lose focus on really what it's about.
No.
Let's not take attention away from the thing that needs to be brought attention to.
It's a much subtler version of white people saying there are Irish slaves in America too. Slavery is not solely a black problem.
Right, exactly.
Well, they don't understand
it's
the
like,
difference between indentured servitude and race and slavery, whatever.
Right.
But it's only mentioned. All lives matter is only mentioned when somebody says black lives.
Right. But they don't really mean all lives matter.
No. I mean, I don't want to hear about those ones mattering.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's what Keith Lee meant at all.
Right, exactly.
But I do want somebody to critique what he said and point out it's got off that happened to you, and it's a completely different subject.
Yeah.
Because I haven't heard of a powerful, popular wrestling figure who has been manipulated in this way, who's a man. I mean, we can go back and look at how Trish Stratus was treated on the air by Vince McMahon for a bunch of years, crawling around, yipping like a dog in her bra and panties, et cetera, et cetera. People can say, well, yeah, they all agreed to doing that. Sure they did. Because they'd probably get fired if they didn't.
Yeah.
How many men did we see put in those kinds of positions of humiliation?
Right.
I can't think of very many, I think about Randy Orton, and it was never a secret how he was mistreating some of the people from the Diva Search. And I'm shitting in a woman's bag in the locker room.
Oh, right,
These
yeah.
are widely accepted stories.
Good Lord. My apologies. I was not laughing at the story. I just kicked my headphones down. Almost destroyed the studio.
I haven't heard a blip about Orton being looked at for that stuff, and we all know it's true. I haven't heard a blip about Vince getting looked at for all of his years of insane storylines.
We were talking about that influence and how it can impact you. I want to play you some audio right now.
Yeah.
And I want to get your... I have a feeling about this. I have a feeling, and I want to see if you agree with me, because after watching this, something really speaks out. Something really jumps out. There's one thing in particular that jumps out about this.
You doing right now?
Yeah, Roddy Piper is talking about Pat Patterson.
Pat Patterson doesn't like me.
Pat doesn't like you?
No, not at all.
Okay.
When again, in the Olympic Auditorium, I was, 21. I must have been okay. You need to be a man about these. I'm talking about myself. You need to be a man about these things. And, since I was 15, I've been in this business. And when you're young in this business, it can be very difficult.
It's a political thing? Was he trying to keep you down?
No. Probably my fault. I was a pretty little kid, believe it or not, one time, and it just got awkward. That's all.
He made you awkward, and you held a grudge.
Or I did, whatever, my bad.
Were you forced to?
No, fuck that. No. It's just, it's a hard business.
Okay. Two things about that whole thing. One, it was probably my fault.
That's exactly what I just wrote down.
That is absolute victim language.
100%.
And 2, I fucked up.
Well,
I'm thinking.
Can I go ahead and add 3 and 4?
Yeah.
Like I said a little while ago, the pressures societally on men as it pertains to physical weakness, the ability to withstand things emotionally, etc. He sounds like a guy who doesn't want to say, I was taken advantage of.
Right.
Because that implies weakness. You let that happen. So it's easier to say, I messed up.
Right.
It's probably me. To suggest otherwise would be to say that you were like overpowered or, again, like used. And that's, for somebody with his backstory, as rough as it was and getting into the Fed at 15,
Yeah.
it would be real hard for him to probably having to admit to the reality of, and we all know Patterson's history, so I don't doubt for a second what that's implying was probably true.
Yeah, it's just messed up. This just came up on my timeline the other day, and I was just like, wow, how relevant is this? That with everybody speaking up and speaking out about injustices behind the curtain, that this is not something that's just happened within the last, 10, 5, 10, 15 years. It's been around forever. And
back at around that time, when he was in his early 20s, so let's do the math real quick. Piper died in his late 50s, correct?
Correct.
Mid-late 50s. And that would have been roughly 5-ish years ago?
This video was uploaded. This clip that we played was from 6 years ago.
I'm trying to think of, though, if he would have been working under Vince McMahon or his father at early 20s when he's talking about, or if that would have been outside of WWF. Because the whole story that I'm aware of all this time is that Patterson has been allowed to be Patterson behind the scenes because, again, Vince holds the keys to that kingdom and Vince has allowed it to occur.
This would have been under Vince McMahon Sr.
Well, I'm not horribly surprised to hear that either.
It's again, like under, and when we're hearing these stories about people who are in these pressuring situations, when we're talking about Jim Cornette and the shit that's going down with him and his wife right now, now he looks back and he's reflecting on what actually happened, and he couldn't even bring himself to say what happened, and he's trying to make excuses like this is somehow, his fault. And it's
just like I said a little while ago, when I thought that men would only talk the way they talked to women because of sexism, in regards to trying to shut down people saying I was a victim.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly misogyny and sexism is always an ingredient when it comes to male-female dynamics, but that goes to show that victimhood, regardless of sex or gender, in this country comes with very specific roles and expectations.
Yeah.
Regardless of age, sex, gender, power, position. There's a reason people don't want to come forward because it's humiliating anyway. It's a reliving of something completely tragic and traumatic for you, probably. And you know that most people aren't going to believe you. Why the hell would you?
Right, exactly. And I think, the one person that we haven't talked about through all of this is Sammy Guevara, who, his situation is a little bit different, where he was on a podcast 4 years ago and made a extremely disturbing comment about Sasha Banks. And
I'll just go ahead and say what he said. He said, God, she was so beautiful, I wanted to rape that woman.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are breaking down the way he said it to try to make it sound worse. I mean, it's terrible the way he said it, but it's terrible either way you look at it. And the fact that this gets leaked, really was not even leaked. I mean, it was public. He went out on public and said it. Yeah. Now he's in a position where he's really well known. He's on national TV. Well, not anymore, fella. Right. And that's the kind of situation that I'd like to start seeing more wrestlers request that audio. If they know they said something that terrible and that awful at one point in their career, they need to do the right thing. They need to get that audio themselves. They need to release it themselves and say, this was me, this is something I did, this is awful, it's not right, and I'm taking the right step to acknowledge it.
Yep.
Instead of, not that it's a better look, but it's understanding. It's very easy to get caught with your pants down and say, I screwed up, I'm seeking help, because that's the natural reaction, that's the PR reaction.
It's asking for forgiveness instead of permission.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's important now that people bring up, if they have something that they've done, they need to bring it up themselves. They need to address it and be a part of the solution and say, listen, I'm not proud of this, but before anything gets released, I want to be the one to say, this is wrong.
Well, and here we go for full transparency again. And the reason I do this is because I want to encourage others to do the exact same thing. I was late to the Twitter party.
Yeah.
And a bunch of my friends like, yo, you got to get on Twitter. This would have been 10-ish years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the very first tweet that I wrote. This was years before transition. And I was in a hardcore band. And it was fucking sausage fest everywhere I went.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The very first thing I wrote was something along the lines of, do me a favor and don't look in my trunk. There may or may not be a dead hooker in there. Like, that's so funny. It's so edgy.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
so hilarious. That was my first impulse. And of course, I was going out of my way to try to pass as some kind of sarcastic dude.
Yeah.
But, like, I know how easy it is to just say that stupid shit and do it. And that's why I keep saying, that's why I've gone back and tried to take ownership and clean that mess. Because it's our job. You make a mess, clean that mess. I know that Sammy has reached out and that Sasha has confirmed that they've had more than one conversation in the last few weeks about that.
Yeah.
I haven't heard her say she forgives it because she shouldn't.
Right, exactly.
I'm with you. I mean, him saying I really fucked up and this is embarrassing, whatever, good. But he wouldn't have been saying it. And I'm willing to bet he probably just forgot. It was just some passing thing.
Right, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, my friend, he definitely leans left of center, but he's not. He's like the good kind of libertarian, if there was such a thing.
Yeah.
I mean, he believes that people need protection and you should be given the freedom to do what you need to if you're not harming, which is honestly more of like a satanic principle. Than
Right, yeah, very much so.
But he was like, you can't do that shit, especially in 2020.
Yeah.
And I know what he means when he says that. You shouldn't do it anyway, but now everybody's paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
That means not only are you more likely to get caught, but it means your net of potential damage is so much bigger too because you're famous. You have a responsibility because you don't know how many hundreds of thousands or millions of people might find that. And if you're not commenting on it, they assume that that's who you are.
Yeah.
And now they're damaged by it as well. So I think it's cool how AW's handled it. They're like, no, you're suspended.
Yeah.
Your money is not your money anymore. We're going to put it into a women's protection shelter or some kind of organization. We're sending you to treatment. When you complete it, we'll revisit.
I don't hate
that. That's
right.
Good. That's rehabilitation offer.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. It is a little interesting, though, as much as I defend AEW and everything, is that they would take that action against Sammy Guevara and at the same time roll out Mike Tyson, who's,
prison time for, And it makes me wonder, I didn't even thought of that, but it makes me wonder if the thought is there's already been restitution. He's already done time.
I've seen people say that, and I've also seen people slam people for saying that.
It doesn't erase the fact that he's the person who did that.
It doesn't erase, in my opinion, it doesn't erase what he did. It was wrong, and I think it's wrong. Yep. From a legal standpoint, he served his time for the crime that he did, and it's very easy for people to talk shit about people who are in the limelight, who've done bad things, just because there's nothing incriminating against them. We're all human. We have all done fucked up things. And the only difference between Mike Tyson and this person talking crap about him on the internet is that person talking crap about them on the internet doesn't have any incriminating evidence against the shitty things that they say behind closed doors. So, again, there's not making light of anything Tyson did, but it's just a simple fact that it's like, well, it's very easy for you to say that because you're on the computer and you're commenting on, someone who you don't know personally, something that you do know that they did, and nobody is perfect. Everybody has done something messed up, but that's exactly what, like I said, that post on Facebook that I made was very much like, listen, when I was in high school, I said some shit that I would not, I am not comfortable. I'm not comfortable with today. Right. Not even that I'm not cool, that I'm not comfortable with it. Yeah. It's because I'm a totally different person.
I would go even step past that and say I'm like violently opposed to the shit that I did and said.
Right.
From anybody.
Right. So I think that's just the important thing, really moving forward, is really just accepting how the world is now, accepting the way it is, the way it needs to go, the changes that need to happen. Because bullshit's not going to be tolerated. No. I think that's the big message that I've been getting is hopefully bullshit will not be tolerated going forward.
You know what's kind of wild to me? I'm into all this like meta thinking.
Yeah.
The second you said, what about Mike Tyson, I knew what you meant.
Yeah.
And I hadn't even considered it for a split second. I know who he is. I know what he's done.
Yeah.
I've had to go and revisit again, why the fuck do I watch wrestling? I've had to go to that level.
Yeah.
Seeing how widespread this is and seeing how Vince, who's been the ringleader for all these years.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about Dark Side of the Ring earlier. So, let's just forget about him overlooking Orton shitting in bags and him humiliating Trish Stratus and all these other women in their brawn panties stuff.
Yeah.
Ashley Mazzaro is a person who came to him and the company and said, I've been sexually harassed and assaulted in this company. I don't think it was said that Vince did it, but Vince is the one who did not look into it, who did not want the PR, who shut it down, and she's dead. And word on the street is that she became a drug addict, probably partially because unresolved trauma.
Yeah.
And, I dedicated my life to this thing, and these people didn't care enough to do anything for me. I don't remember anything on Raw when she died. Do you remember seeing any graphics about Ashley Mazzaro passed?
Nope.
To me, that's an indictment. They say it about all these other people who died. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to me, it's like if you acknowledge, it's just like Trump and his mask thing. He's not going to wear a mask. Because if he does, now he's acknowledging there is a problem, and that erases all of his fucking lies if there's no problem.
Right.
If Vince McMahon acknowledged that this woman had those issues, now all of a sudden everybody gets to acknowledge the fact that he runs a fucking petri dish of a company.
Yeah.
And I wrestle, pun not even intended, I wrestle with the fact that my favorite form of media is riddled with fucking sexual abusers and assaulters and misogynists and deniers and blackballers and fucking teen sexers. Like, what the fuck am I doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah. But again, we're kind of hitting the reset button on all this, especially locally too. It is tough when you've got all these things stacking up against you. Like, wow, like where do we draw the line and just say F this?
Right. But like that's what I'm saying. I think that's why I overlooked the Tyson thing. Yeah. Because I'm just used to the fact, and I tell people, my favorite thing is one of the most problematic things you're going to find out there. Yeah. And it's okay. Like, people can say I have problematic favorites. Like, I watch Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Everybody's a monster. Yeah. Right, exactly. There's nothing likable about any of them. But at least I can say, you know what, whatever, it appeals to some base part of me, and I know it's a problem. I'm not out here doing this stuff. I'm not going to, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to continue these cycles. Right. And that's the same for the wrestling thing, but like, yeah, if nothing else, if you're going to consume problematic material, you'd better at least be dissecting that material and taking ownership of the fact that, yeah, this is my thing, and it is fucked up. Right. And I'm willing to discuss that with people because I feel like I'm doing wrong. Flat out. It's a weird thing to finally be at a point to do exactly what I want to be doing, participating in this company, announcing. And we said, Raymond is a fucking angel. Yeah. As far as men in wrestling go, apparently. And it's still in this industry. And it's parts of it are directly opposed to the biggest parts of myself and my personal morality. Right. But, again, I think it's one of those things where it's like we can't let the mistakes that other companies are making and let them be a reflection of who individual promoters are. Josh Raymond's a great promoter and a great person.
He's stood up and he said, everybody needs to be welcome where I'm at. He's a example of what all promotions should be. And so we have to just be able to accept all the fucked up things that are happening in the world of professional wrestling and remember that where we're at, it's completely different, and we just got to lead by example. And I think we're doing a good job so far.
Yeah, that's the other side of it, I guess, is I've told people a lot of times, like, I don't want to be an American anymore. It's humiliating. Makes me feel complicit. And I've had several people say, well, if you leave this country, then what are you doing to, like, correct the problem? And I'm like, frankly, self-preservation.
Yeah.
I wish everybody could do it. They can't. And I could die on my principles, or I can try to wring, like, 20 or 30 years of, like, guilt-free existence in a non-American fucking country.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I guess if I applied that to the wrestling thing, wrestling is showing signs of changing for the better. Clearly, per all these people being fired and suspended.
Right.
And if there's going to be a new wave of ambassadors doing it the right way,
yeah,
and there's a possibility of that working, then I can live with my participation being for the betterment as opposed to participating in all the wrong shit.
Yeah. I agree. Yep. Like I said, I'm excited about hopefully things getting back to a point where we can start gathering again. Obviously, the most important thing is people's health. So we're going to keep an eye on that.
I know we're short on time, but I mean, we might as well just nail it real quick. AEW has had maybe 1 or 2 people come up positive for COVID, and they've gotten quarantined because they're testing every show.
Yeah.
Right? Are you following this WWE thing with all these cases that are coming out now?
Yeah.
They're projecting between 20 and 30. It may be higher than that. They were refusing to let people wear masks on TV. They told family and friends who should have never been there in the first place because they wanted the crowd to look like there's something going on. If you wear masks, you're not going on the air. And in fact, if you want to wear a mask, you're not a fan. That's supposedly straight from Kevin Dunn. I've heard it from multiple news sources now.
That's insane.
They always come out with those releases saying, like, our number one priority is what? Health and safety of talent. We've known that's a lie since Owen fucking Hart.
Yeah.
Right? And now they're going to have all these outbreaks happening. And I don't know if I said this to you, but I said it to some other people. And I want to say it on the air so we can come back to it so I can give myself the all-time pat on the back.
Yeah.
I told you so. I guarantee you the reason Vince got that status of being essential.
Yeah.
Remember how ridiculous it was? WWE is an essential business?
Yeah.
Who makes that decision? Trump and his people in those states.
Yep.
It's no coincidence that Florida is one of the states that was rolling back protection so fast. And they're now one of the states that's having to shut down again because of this massive spikes in numbers.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, and anybody listening, you owe me $10 when it comes out that Vince McMahon refused to let those things on the air with masks and things because Trump said you can't.
Right.
This is part of my thing. You want to do this? You want to be on my little committee for reopening?
Right.
Away whatever jackass thing.
Mm-hmm.
No masks.
Yeah.
I guarantee you that's what's happening.
Well, we're gonna put that on trial next week because that's something you brought up, Owen Hart, and I think with the Dark Side of the Ring series, there's a lot that needs to be addressed, and we're gonna be going through the trial of Vince McMahon here and trying to lock this down because I think there's a lot of injustice that's taken place. Really, not even since then, but that was the one big, yeah. That one's tough. We're going to get into that next week. A lot of some of the things that have come out because of that show in regards to Vince McMahon. And we're going to put together some thoughts and see if we can lock this down. But how this guy is not in prison is insane.
I mean, I got my fingers crossed. I have for a very long time.
A man can dream. I can dream! I don't know. I can only hope that some kind of resolution comes out of it because after that episode I was pretty upset at the whole thing.
Get the body out of the way. Let's keep the show running. Oh, and by the way, Snook is in jail. What? Let's go pay those people off. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, Vicky Guerrero wants to have some of my people on the air, but she was on AEW. Fuck her. Like,
we're gonna get
monster.
We're gonna get into that next week. We'll be back. Thanks for listening again. Crucial Squared Circle back in the game. Until then, adios.